Now, the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who is also the chair of the Subcommittee on Investor Protection, Entrepreneurship, and Capital Markets, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. There's been a comment about inflation. I should point out that inflation is going to be worse or has been worse over the 2022-2023 period in most other developed countries as compared to the United States. So the real lesson is don't be a developed country on a planet with COVID and a European war. We've done our best to handle this situation. Every other country that's similarly situated has as well. We're told that maybe we shouldn't have a higher conforming loan limit in California than in other states. This is, I take this personally. If you've got a similar house in a similar neighborhood in one state and another state, the U.S. government should provide the same level of assistance rather than say it's okay to do it somewhere else, but not in California. I believe Mr. Holtz Eskin pointed out the inadequacy of supply, which I think is the problem. It is supply and demand. But keep in mind, we have more square footage of housing in our country than any other major country in the world. It's just we have giant homes for some people and others are living on the streets. We're urged to be patient. It's hard to be patient while you're living in your car. There are three problems. There's the homelessness problem where people can't even get an apartment. There are people who are in apartments, but the rent's too damn high. And there are people who can't afford or cannot comfortably afford to buy a home. We can build a few buildings with federal money. We as politicians can be there to cut the ribbon. But if you're trying to provide housing for nearly 340 million people in a capitalist society, you have to look at the homes that are going to be built and operated in the capitalist society. Otherwise, you're just cutting ribbons for a few hundred people. We can incentivize the building of homes, but it's nothing compared to what local governments do to prevent the building of workforce housing. If you require no more than 4 homes on an acre and a $100,000 fee to hook up to local services, you're not going to have housing that people can afford. We have the fiscalization of land use planning, where a city in my state loses money if they allow the construction of housing. And in many places, the way for the city, which makes the land use planning decisions, to make money is an auto dealership or luxury homes. Very low costs to the city, lots of revenue for the city. It is absolutely absurd that we provide cities with money based upon how rich their residents are. If every city in every state got the same amount of money per resident, we would have a fair provision of local services and the end of an incentive to keep out workforce housing. We see zoning decisions made to keep out poor people, sometimes to keep out people of color, sometimes to, quote, preserve the environment, which adds up to being often the same thing. If you can't build an apartment building anywhere in the city, you can't have workforce housing in that city. And when you look at the zoning and the fees, which this Congress has not prohibited, it's not surprising that we have more square footage than any other developed country and more per person, and we have more homeless than any other developed country. I've got to shift to another issue. I believe Ms. Bailey, should we be doing more to provide assistance for safe parking? Because a good chunk of the homeless people in my area, they have a car, they just don't have a place to live.
Sir, we should be doing more. I'm sorry, thank you so much for the question. And we should be doing more to make sure families can remain safely housed. The American Rescue Plan Act that this Congress passed included increased support to protect homeowners with the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We have done a tremendous job of holding.
I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question. Mr. Mitchell, is there any way that we can create enough housing if we allow cities to charge $100,000, $150,000 per unit to the developer, and to not allow more than 4 or 5 units of housing per acre.
I think it'll be critical for local governments to make sure that they are creating zoning laws that allow for the construction of the kinds of units that are necessary to house the number of people to meet demand. And currently we are not doing that. And as you mentioned, in most localities, it's not possible at this moment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey, is now recognized for 5 minutes.